Good morning, everyone. This is Professor Hill. This is a short video for our class, Introduction to Ethics, Philosophy 2306 here at St. Philip's College for the Maymester 2021. And we're at the end of our first week. Today is Saturday, the 22nd of 2021. And so yesterday, Friday, I was able to see all of your essays, work through and grade them. As I mentioned briefly in yesterday's video, they were quite good. And so the class on the whole is on the right track. Today, Saturday, as we're getting ready for the next essay based on chapter 2, which is tomorrow, Sunday night, I wanted to make a couple of quick comments about the Jenny Lake case study yesterday, and then also about the John the Paramedic case, which is coming up. So, right off the bat, let me say that, again, the essays were quite good. As a whole, they addressed the questions, they brought in information, definitions, quotes from the chapter, which was important. And again, people then also read through and commented on at least 2 of their classmates. That's the system you got to get into. So, the Jenny Lake case, as I mentioned yesterday, it's a tough case. It ends badly. It's always going to end badly from the very beginning. It's just a question of which bad ending are we going to end up with. And there were a couple of students that said things like, well, it's her decision. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because I'm asking you to make a moral judgment about what she did, her actions and behavior. Now, she had to make a choice, and she did. And some people agreed with it. Some people thought, no, maybe she made the wrong call. Maybe she should have continued her life-saving treatment. She didn't. But first of all, we got to stay away from the who am I to judge? My grandma told me not to judge anybody. And look, I get that sentiment. The sentiment, especially when it's advice from older folks, is when they say don't judge other people, part of what they're saying is, don't think you're better than other people. Don't be haughty. Don't be judgmental, thinking that you're better than everyone else. That's all sound advice. But we do have to make moral judgments, if for no other reason, as a guide to our own actions and behaviors. And there's a little bit of a difference between saying, what would you do in that situation, and then your judgment about what someone else did in that. They're related, but they're not exactly the same thing. And this is the point that I want to make about the Jenny Lake case, because one of the key factors in all of these case studies and in all of morality is, who's the decision maker? Whose decision is this? It's like in medical ethics, if you're the patient, the doctors are going to be giving you advice, and then again, depending on the options, you might seek advice from family members, from clergy, from a medical ethicist, from a lawyer. There's lots of advice you might get about what's the right call, what's the right thing to do. Hold that thought for a minute. Because also in this particular case, there were lots of folks who said, she did the right thing because she sacrificed her self-interest for that of her child. Even though it was going to be hard for her, even though it was going to be difficult, even though it might mean she sacrificed her life, she was doing the right thing because she was doing it for her child. This is it's what we call the mama bear moral defense. It's that parents sacrifice for the children. And so even if there's difficulty involved, you do it anyway because that's the right thing to do. In this case, the problem is that Jenny is 17 years old. She's a minor. The fact of the matter is, it's not her call. It's not her decision to make. It's the parents. The parents have to make decisions about medical treatment for minor children. Now, some students react with, oh, well, come on, she's 17, she's pregnant, she's old enough. And I'm like, oh, no, I get all that. And if she had come into disagreement with her parents, she might have said, well, I'm going to reject your decision and make my own. But to do that, I have to go get permission of a court. I have to be emancipated. I have to have a judge say that it's my decision and not my parents. And a judge in that situation, what they do is they look at the totality of the circumstances, meaning they look at all the factors. And is the child mature enough? Pregnancy would be a factor, but it's not a determining one. I run into this kind of occasionally. Students say, oh, no, if she's pregnant, she's an adult. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. It's a strong factor that a judge would consider in an emancipation case, but it's not an automatic. Now, in this case, would she have been found by a judge to be old enough, mature enough under the circumstance? Maybe, I don't know. But what happened was, faced with this decision, Jenny said, I want to stop my treatment. And her parents, especially the mom in this particular case, said, okay. Now, to Jenny, that was her making a decision and her mom agreeing with her. But really what is happening was the mom, who was the decision maker, was getting the advice and opinion of Jenny and then making a decision and just kind of framing it that way as, well, okay, we're in agreement. And it's a good thing they were. But what if they hadn't been? We'll come back to that later. It's a striking thing here, though, because, and the point I want to make today is that you end up with two different outcomes if you apply that same mama bear rule. And what I mean is, if you think the rule is parents sacrifice for their children, Jenny sacrificed her own life for her daughter, that's why it's right. You apply that to the actual decision maker in this case, the mom, and the mom would have said, I'm here to protect you and to do whatever is necessary to save your life, so you're going to continue your life-saving treatment. You end up with the opposite decision. And I think you should look at the mom and say, Mom, why are you deciding this? Why are you allowing this to happen? Because it's not in the best interest of your child, Jenny. Now, that doesn't mean that there's an easy answer to this dilemma. Of course not. It's wildly complex, which is one of the things which is striking about it as a case study. I'm just saying there's lots of aspects and complexities that are operating in this situation. It's not a simple thing. In fact, let me take it one step further. This is I said we'll come back to this. The short version of this is, there's another case, the Cassandra C case. Similar story. Cassandra, 17-year-old girl, finds out she has cancer, refuses treatment. Sounds a little bit like Jenny Lake. Now, Jenny Lake was doing it because she had cancer, she was getting life-saving treatment, but then found out she was pregnant and stops that treatment. Here, Cassandra gets diagnosed with cancer, but in this case, they say, look, the type of cancer you have, which is a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, is very treatable. And in fact, with chemotherapy, it's a very effective treatment. And we can't make any guarantees. Cancer is, it's lethal if untreated. But if you go through chemotherapy, on average, 95% of people like you that are similarly situated, 5 years out, 95% of them are in remission and they're doing fine. So good news, let's do the chemotherapy and odds are great that you'll get better. And she says no. And the doctors are like, why? And she says, well, I read about this on the internet and it sounds like chemotherapy is poison and you're trying to kill me and I'm not doing it. And the doctors are like, well, okay, no, look, it is poison, but it's poison to kill the cancer cells. It kills the cancer, but not you. You're going to get sick because it's tough. And you're gonna, your hair might fall out. You're gonna feel nauseous. It's gonna be bad, but it's the way to save you. She's like, no, no. I read about this. There's risk to like organ damage, and I'm not willing to take the risk. And the doctor's like, no, there's a risk from those things, yes, but left untreated, the risk from you dying of cancer is much, much greater. She's like, forget it. Well, so then they realize, oh, well, look, hold on a minute. She's 17 years old. She's not the decision maker. So they turn to the mom and they say to the mom, okay, look, she's not getting the whole thing here. You need to make the decision for her because you're the parent. And the mom says, oh no, who do you think showed her all those websites? I think she needs to use some alternative medicine. It was crystals and pyramids and stuff. It was not traditional Western professional medicine at the hospital. And the doctors are like, oh my God, no, no, no. You need to make this decision. You need to help her. Mom says no. So now Cassandra says no, 17. The mom says no. And the doctors do what? If the mom was talking about herself and refusing treatment, that would be one thing. But that's not the situation here. She's making a decision which endangers the life of her child. So the doctors called Child Protective Services. They get the family courts involved and they say, this mom is making decisions which is going to result in the death of this child. And we need to get her removed from that home and treated at the hospital. And so the judge looks at this and goes, yeah, no, you're right. And so court order, and at the house shows up the doctors, the Child Protective Service people. It's called something different because it's in where it was happening in Connecticut. But the cops and they all show up at the house and they say, look, we're taking your daughter into custody. She was actually alone at the house when they showed up. They take her into custody. They take her to the hospital and they force her to take chemotherapy. Now, that would be really shocking if it was an adult, because we don't do that with adults. If adults decide, I don't want treatment, even though you've explained it to them, even though it's going to result in their death, we say people get to make decisions for themselves about their own medical care. But not if it's a kid, not if it's a child. The state has a vested interest in protecting the health and welfare and lives of children. And that line is, again, at 18. Well, it turns out that the family gets rid of it. Mom she freaks out. She gets upset. But no, the courts have upheld it. The cops upheld it. They keep her at the hospital. They give her the chemotherapy. It takes months, by the way. And so once she finishes it, she still hasn't turned 18, but she finishes the life-saving chemotherapy. And they're like, well, look, we just did this so you could get through the chemotherapy. Now that's done, you can go home. So even though she hadn't turned 18 yet, they release her back to the mom because their thinking was the danger is no longer present because we got her the chemotherapy. By the way, that story, I'll tell you more about later, has a sad and tragic ending. The short version is that the chemotherapy did work. She went into remission, but then she turned 18. And then later, when she turned 20, cancer came back. And at that point, she decided she didn't want to treat it. Nobody could force her. And she died. It's a sad story, by the way. It's at the end of it all, the mom is saying, I blame the doctors for her death. The ones that didn't treat her the second time because she could and did refuse. Anyway, but here's the thing. If you think the doctors did the right thing by protecting the safety, health, well-being, life of the child in that situation, why didn't they do it in the Jenny Lake case? Why even give it to her as an option if she's 17? Does it apply? Is the difference, and the only difference is that she's pregnant? And if that's the case, should the doctors have stepped in anyway? Should they have gone to, Child Protective Services and gotten a court order to force her to continue her treatment, even if it ended the pregnancy? Now, they didn't do that. But I think there's an interesting moral argument that maybe they should have. And again, the question is, they should have to protect the life of the child who is at risk, Jenny Lake. Okay, I'm curious what you think about that. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'll talk some more about John the plumber tomorrow. Not the plumber, John the paramedic tomorrow. A striking case about somebody who takes the law into their own hands. That's a powerful and difficult story. I'll tell you more about it tomorrow, because believe me, the first time I heard that story was from John in a classroom. And man, that was an explosive day. So for now, take care. Think about that. Think about what the doctors should have done. Did they do the right thing? Yeah? No? It's not easy. Take care. Bye-bye.